West War Room Rivals is sponsored by Emporia State Federal Credit Union. Learn more at esfcu.com. Text or call the number 620-342-2336 to get started today. ESFCU is the Shovix banking of choice, federally insured by the NCUA. Welcome, everybody, to the West War Room Rivals. We've got a phenomenal episode going on right now, you guys. We have the guest, the one and only Dick Vermeil, about to join us pretty soon. But before we get started, let's do a quick roll call. Shovik brothers, kick us off.
Yep, I am Austin, co-host of Shovik Sports, representing the Kansas City Chiefs.
And I'm Corey, co-host of Shovik Sports as well, representing Broncos.
Tim?
I'm Tim. I'm representing the Chargers from Answer the Call.
And Matt.
And I'm Matt from Orange Crush News 365, representing the Broncos.
And I'm Cody, representing the Raiders. Let's get into it, fellas.
Ball tip and caught! Oh my gosh! The double deflection! Screen instead, he'll float it over the middle. Jump ball and it's Powers down the sideline. The rookie from Georgia with the game's first goal. And he caught the touchdown.
All right, guys, welcome back to the West War Room Rivals, where rivals collide. Today, we are beyond honored to be joined by a true titan of football, a person whose coaching style has true grit, leadership, and has shaped the generation of the game of football that we love. He took over the Philadelphia Eagles from bottom, took them to the Super Bowl, built the foundation of the greatest show on turf with the St. Louis Rams, reignited Chiefs Kingdom during an unforgettable Kansas City run. He's also the inductee of the 2022 class of the NFL Hall of Fame. He's known for emotion, intensity, and his genuine love for his players, and he is one of the most well-respected players in all of football. Please welcome Coach Dick Vermeil. Coach, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
All right. Always great to talk football. Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone got anything that they want to say before we get started, you guys? Because we've been so honored to even have 15 minutes of your time before the start of the show. So does anyone want to just say something before we get started to the question one?
Yeah, Coach, I'm Corey. It's truly an honor to have you on here. We've been working on this for a couple weeks now, right? When we first got kind of the idea of, what we wanted to do with the War Room, the kind of vision that we had for this. And honestly, there's no one better to share a vision of football than having you on here with us. So again, from all of us, we truly are thankful for your time today.
Oh, hey, my pleasure, guys. Like I just said, it's always fun to be back involved with football. I've been out of the game since January 1st, 2006, though I follow it closely and I do a little radio show here in town during the season on Friday mornings. But it's always, again, to be reconnected, especially now in the off season.
Yeah, no kidding.
Absolutely.
All right. We ready to go, fellas?
Let's do it.
All right, Coach. So I kind of want to walk through basically your coaching and kind of conclude with basically your philosophy and what you've done on the game since you've been gone, from what you've said since 2006, and from what you've said, I can speak that you're still within the ripples of the NFL. I don't think it feels like that you've gone at all. You're still in the fabric of it all and very prevalent. So, you've had a long coaching journey, starting in high school, obviously in college, working your way through the NFL. What's the most, what do you remember the most of the early days of your coaching that shaped you today?
I think what I learned every day and how to correct my mistakes and recognize that someone's doing something better and learn how they do it, then add it to your repertoire, add it to your scheme, add it to your philosophy. I started out as an assistant coach in high school in 1959. The next year I was a head coach in high school. And fortunate for me, the athletic director, head coach from the years before retired and hired me, and he had loads of experience. And he was my first assistant coach. And it helped me tremendously to have a guy that had been coaching high school football as a head coach for a long time. And he really helped me get started. I was coach of the year in the conference at my first year there. And the next year we won the conference championship because of his contribution of educating me and do this, don't do this, think about this, try this. It was very stimulating. So that was a implanted thought that I carried through the rest of my career. Never be so cocky that you can't listen to a guy that's got a better idea than you.
Wow. It's really
That's
good
great words
advice.
of wisdom for sure.
It really
Absolutely
is.
love that.
All right. So I have a question for you, Coach. Inheriting a struggling Eagles team in 1976, what was your mindset in taking on that challenge, and how did you begin turning the culture around?
Well, no, going there when the conference chiefs, there's the George Allens of the world, there's all these great coaches in this conference, and then Don Coryell comes in, and these kind of guys, and you're coaching against Landry twice a year, and these kind of guys. I knew I was in no position to ever outsmart them, but I thought being younger and passionate, enthusiastic, I could outwork them. So we just formed our frame of mind was we may not win many games right away, but we're going to get better every day. And that we didn't have a first, second, or third round pick the first year, didn't have a first, second round pick or third round pick the second year, didn't have a first or second round pick the third year. So we weren't going to accumulate a lot of players. So what my staff and I did, we organized practices like college spring practices, where you're trying to make the player at each position a better player at his position, then gradually improve the team concepts and put them in it. And it was very physical, very hard. My first training camp in Philadelphia started July 3rd. Okay. Double days, and we never took the pads off. We couldn't even spell walkthrough. Okay. It was, and by God, they kept getting better. The few good players we had became pro players, Pro Bowl players. The average or below got better. The guys that almost couldn't play got so they could play. And lo and behold, their third year, we're in the playoffs. And that was really just all hard work and many hours, breaking the game down individually, then collectively putting them together on the practice field. Yeah. No such thing as walkthroughs, no such thing as no padded practices, except the day before a preseason game. And we played our veterans in preseason games because you can make them better individually on the practice field, but to put them collectively in a game atmosphere, they got to work together in the entire atmosphere. So they would normally play the first half of the game. Every once in a while, we would bring them out at the start of the third quarter just to get the feel of being in the locker room and coming out. And as my career went on, we gradually worked them a little less in game day, rather, playing in the first quarter, part of the second, then out, those kinds of things. But that's how we built that football team. And fortunately, I had Marion Campbell and Fred Bruni and these kind of guys, Jerry Wamper and the offensive line coaches and those kind of Dick Corey, all these coaches with me. And Carl Peterson really working over to take over the personnel as he moved into the administration off the field. And Jimmy Murray, the general manager, never saying no to anything. Only thing he ever asked me is, what can I do to help? So we were in the right atmosphere. And our goal every year, the first 3 years to win was, believe it or not now, win one more game than we won last year.
Yeah, there you go.
I never wanted to set a goal that was not possible. Okay. I wasn't talking about winning NFC championships or anything like that. Once we got going, those goals became much tougher to achieve. And fortunately, we were able to do it, and then by the 1979 season, we were a good football team. That was the first year we had a first round pick, Jerry Robinson, truly a gifted athlete. And I had recruited him to UCLA. So I knew him, and I knew what I was getting in this product. And he became a fine player. And in fact, the first time we ever beat Dallas, he was the most valuable player on the field on a Monday night game in November 1979. Okay. So we were fortunate. The big thing was the coaching staff that I had.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. Kind of want to pivot just a little pivot off of the previous question real quick, Cody. You hear it a lot nowadays that it's hard to get players to buy in. So what was your initial message to get the players to buy in that, hey, this is going to be internal within you guys, that we're going to breed competition. We want you guys to work really hard because it's you guys, right? So how did you, quote unquote, get them to buy in to your message on how to get better?
Well, before they buy in, they have to trust you. They have to believe in what you're saying. So you don't want to exaggerate your own talents with overloading your mouth with your rear end. Yeah, you don't make them any promises. and since when you take over a losing team, it's easier to convince people what they were doing is not good enough. And then this is how we're going to make you a better football player. And it's going to be tough. Some of you will retire early. You'll walk off the field, say, hey, I'm not hanging on this kind of stuff, which we had people do. The hell with it. I'm not going to work like this. And they leave. More often than not, they never weren't picked up by another team. But we built it that way. And I have learned when adversity is handled correctly and not in a demeaning way, and you point out the positives of what you did better this week, even though you got beat, gradually you lose fewer games, okay? Because you don't lose confidence in yourself and you don't disbelieve what the leadership is telling you because you see progress. And, the guy that really gains by getting better is the player because his contract gets extended. His contract gets dollars added to it. In those days, football players worked in the off season. They weren't making a lot of money. Jaworski, and I think ended up being my highest paid player and should have been, but at probably around $500,000 a year. Okay. Starting quarterback, all pro, NFC player of the year. They weren't making a lot of money in those days.
No, that's awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Absolutely.
All right, Tim.
Are we ready for my next one?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the Philly media and fan base are famously intense. How did that environment shape you as a coach, as a leader during those years, Coach?
Well, I took the advice of John Wooden. I got to know John Wooden real well. First, I was an assistant coach at UCLA in 70. Then I came back as a head coach. And I made sure I found a way to spend time with Coach Wooden anytime he had free time. And one time he told me, he says, Coach, you've got a lot of responsibility here. He says, I don't want you reading the newspapers during the season. I don't want you listening to the radio talk shows or watching television during the season. Because what they say about you that is really good probably isn't all true. What they say about you that's really bad, and when you're losing, they're going to say a lot of it, probably isn't all true. So you don't need the distraction. Stay away from it. Nobody likes to be criticized. It can distort your focus on what you're really here to do. So do that. And something? I bought into that 100%. And I now after having spent 14 years in broadcasting, I better respect that side of the business. But yes, Philadelphia is intense. They're still intense. Still,
They are.
and they were very intense then. But I didn't listen to it because I didn't hear it. I didn't see it on the print because I didn't read it. All I had to do was focus on making my football team and me a better coach and them better players. And fortunately for me, it worked. Our problem was in not having all those early picks my first 3 years. The last couple of years we didn't have young players to replace. There was nobody taking over a position and playing it better because they were a high pick. And that hurt us our last couple of years. Even though in 1981 we came out, we're the only undefeated team in football. We were 6-0, but we ran out of horsepower. We didn't have the players to take. Berge retires. We didn't have a Berge to take his place because we didn't have a first, second round pick, for a couple of years, and that hurt us. But our process stayed the same. And our players today, I spent 2 hours with Jaworski Saturday. Okay, they still talk about how hard they worked, how much they care about each player that went through the problems of rebuilding that program, and I think they take as much pride out of the improvement and the way they did it together. And then they do and winning the NFC Championship. I really do. These guys are really close to each other. I talked to Jerry Sizemore yesterday, my right tackle. He lives in Texas. I was worried that he was involved with the flood area, and he wasn't.
Yeah.
but these guys are very, very close. And when they talk to each other, right now I could go on my phone. There is a text group. There's 19 guys that text. I have to keep my cell phone on silent because once a former Eagle player texts, they all start answering. And my God, sometimes beep, 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 beep. What's going on right now? But they're so close together because they went through the adversity and they handle it properly. Not blaming the other guy, not blaming the coach, but assuming the responsibility for improvement. And they did. They did.
Love that.
Coach, I have a kind of a bonus question that ties into this. You talked about how you didn't listen to the radio shows and you didn't listen to the talk shows, good or bad. Do you think that Nick Sirianni did a really good job of that this past season? Because at one point, fans and media was calling for his job and saying that he should be fired as the Philadelphia Eagles head coach. Do you think he did a great job in kind of ignoring that buzz?
Well, whenever you end up a world champion, whatever you've done was a great job. Okay. I don't care who's responsible, who's the most best defensive coach, best offensive coach. When you're the head coach of a team that wins the world championship, take the credit, because next year when you lose 4 in a row, they're going to boo you. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
They're going to say, well, you can't coach. Nick did an outstanding job in his own way. And I'm sure he grew. He had never been a head coach at any level. I was fortunate. I had a head coaching job in high school, a head coaching job in junior college, a head coaching at UCLA, and head coaching in the NFL. That it gave me opportunities to learn and build my own leadership philosophy. And Nick comes in full bore, and he's never done a poor job. Now, the last half of the season, remember they lost a lot of games, but hell, I've lost a lot of games, okay? And I still thought I was doing a pretty good job. So I think you got to give him credit for who he is. And the one thing I learned about experience, it doesn't help you until after you needed it, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he grew. He made some good decisions, and Vic Fangio coming in and what he did with the staff and the offensive coordinator, and now in New Orleans, he did a world championship job. Give him credit, okay?
Yep.
John Wooden told me a long time ago, he said, the best coach doesn't always win. Some of the finest coaches in basketball are great, and they don't win their conference championship. But no one could have done a better job with players they have than these coaches did. So he always told me that, and I always kept that in the back of my mind.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
All right. So looking at obviously Philadelphia, what you built there, you were there for 7 seasons. I mean, it kind of hit the pinnacle when you were able to take the Eagles to the Super Bowl in I think it was 1981, right, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
During your tenure there, is there something that you can look back to that makes you the most proud of the work that you did there during those 7 years?
Well, I don't think anybody had ever gone to a Super Bowl in 5 years that didn't have a first, second, or third round pick the first 2 years he was there. And the team been losing and hadn't been in the playoffs in 18 seasons. I don't think anybody's ever done that. Now, I don't give myself credit for it. I'm going to take some of the credit for it. But our process on our people working together, from the equipment man to the trainers to the doctors. I was just in Canton, Ohio a week ago with my video photographer, Mike Doherty, okay, because Larry Clerical of the Rams was put in the Hall of Excellence there in Canton. No, it takes a whole package. And as soon as you start thinking you're solely responsible for it, you're going to get your ass kicked, okay?
All right, Matt, you're up.
So, Coach, one thing I've always been curious about, Super Bowl 34, Titans and Rams. I mean, that was a pretty iconic Super Bowl. Neither team had a turnover that game. Kurt Warner set a passing yards record. Steve McNair set a quarterback rushing yards record. But it all came down to that final drive. And there was a lot that happened in that final drive. Steve McNair making dynamic plays under pressure. Your Rams had 3 penalties against you that cost 25 yards. And, now they're on your territory. They started deep in their own territory. Now they're in yours. Steve McNair avoids the sack, gets it down to 5 seconds, timeout. His next play, he hits Dyson. and Mike Jones, holding on for dear life, makes the stop at the 1. What's going through your mind? What are your emotions? What's going through your mind as this is all unfolding?
Well, I remember yelling, "All right, guys, last play," because that kind of thing. But prior to that, as they were moving, I felt their momentum, and they were doing a great job. And we had, like you said, we had pressure. Kevin Carter had him spinning around the backfield there by head, and he spins out of it, throws a completed pass. Things were going their way, and our defense was worn down. And I was starting to think about, they score and they tie it up. What are we going to do in overtime? What are we going to do? Well, what's our approach to start out the overtime? How, these kinds of things. And I was very concerned. And obviously, what else could you be? And not that final play, I'm on the 50-yard line, leaning hands on knees, looking out as far as I could see, but I couldn't see what happened. The ball was snapped, the ball was caught. I see the officials, the linesmen there, and I'm waiting for them to go either like this or like this. And fortunately, they went like that. Then I knew. I said, we're world champions. And but I can't describe. I don't have a big enough vocabulary to give an accurate evaluation of how I really felt at that time. It is so. I've been asked that question many times, and I've never answered it intelligently. It's all going so fast, so hard, and so intense, and different thoughts are running through your mind. And all I know, prior to that play, I was thinking, if they score, we better start thinking about overtime. Okay. Year later or so, I'm with Jeff Fisher, and he says, "Coach, if we scored, we were going to go for 2." Woo! And the way, they were big. They were bigger than we were in their offensive line, too. Our defensive line wasn't that big. And they were bigger. They were a physical football team, and they could have easily won the football game.
Yeah. Was there like a specific defensive call you made prior to that final drive, or did you just trust the defense to get the job done?
Peter Junta was calling the defenses. My co-defensive coordinator, Peter Junta and John Bunning. Those two guys do never get the credit they deserve. We are the number 6 defense in football that year, with the number 1 offense. We were the number 1 defense against the run. Those obvious reasons, because people had to throw the ball more to catch up. But they did a great job. And Peter, who's still coaching in New Orleans, did a beautiful job of running the defense. Great poise under pressure. Very, very bright guy. A lot smarter than this old coach. Very bright. And I never, ever really interfered with either offensive or defensive coordinators during the ball game. I would make suggestions, but I wouldn't make a demanding statement.
Nice. That's crazy. That's crazy.
You got Mike Martz running the offense. Everyone talks about the offense. Yeah, I don't think an assistant coach in the history of the league has ever come in to a team that was losing and made the contribution to winning that he did. Never. I worked with him 1 year. I watched him coach in college. I heard about him when he was an assistant at the Rams before I got there, and I would have kept him on the staff if I was hired very late after other people turned it down. But he did a spectacular job. But of that miracle, here's things a lot of people don't give credit for. 11 of those offensive touchdowns, 11 of those touchdowns were scored with the offense sitting on the bench. We had 3 or 4 special teams returns for touchdowns, and the rest were scored by the defense. Now, I don't want to look up and see if we had been or would have been the number 1 scoring team in football if we eliminated those 11 touchdowns. I don't want to find that out. Okay. In fact, I was with Marshall Faulk in February. We were with the Missouri Athletic Club, put on a function celebrating the 25 years of the game. And Marshall Faulk got up and spoke. And you know what he did? He gave all the credit to the defense. I was so proud of him. Now, here's a Hall of Fame superstar, a true difference maker kind of guy. If you coach him, you'll probably never coach one better, and you had never coached one like him before that. And he's given the credit to the defense. I was so respectful and appreciative and grateful he made that statement, because those guys on defense have really never gotten credit for winning. It's always about the greatest show on turf.
Yep. Right.
Yeah. And then Coach, my next question for you is, so early in Kurt Warner's career, you were described as using a tough love approach with him, but people close to both you and Kurt said that your relationship was kind of like a father-son bond. Do you still have that relationship with Kurt Warner today?
Oh yeah, we're very close. I'm very close to a lot of players because they become part of my family. Those guys. I got a lot of black kids. Okay, I've got a lot of friends, a lot of coaches. Okay, a lot of friends in coaching and friends as players. And as you come up through coaching, like I did through high school, junior college, and you work with the different age groups, and I realized a long time ago, no matter how old you are, you all need the same things. You need to be with people that care about you, no matter what you're doing, no matter how you chew their ass out or whatever it is. They got to know you care about them personally. Mm-hmm. And I've got players in the second or third year that are personal friends of mine today. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Good.
It's I don't know. I maybe lost my point here now, but
you're more welcome to keep going.
It's to me, it's a relationship building is part of leadership. Mm-hmm. Very few people are disciplined enough to give their best to people that care about the least. Now they'll do it because they want to get paid, but they'll never make the same commitment if they really, really cared about their leadership as well as they caring about making a living. I really believe that. And there's some great coaches that have proved that long before me and are doing it today.
Yeah. So when you guys had to turn to Kurt Warner, when Trent Green went down during that season where you guys went on your Super Bowl run, and do you remember the point where, during practices, maybe in direct conversation with Kurt Warner, where you gave your full belief that we're going to win every football game when we're on the field because we have this guy that is going to take our team to the next level? Or was it just one of those things where we're going to play to our strengths and we're going to do what we can with the results on the field? Did you think that this team would go as far as it did with Kurt Warner post Trent Green injury?
When we elevated Kurt from the backup quarterback to the starting, remember the first year there, he was our third quarterback, throwing the ball against our defense as the opposing quarterback every day. Mm-hmm. One advantage of being a head coach and not running your own offense like I had prior to at the Eagles, UCLA, and all my other jobs, you're in a position to watch everybody in much more detail. And I can't tell you how many times I walk off the practice field and he's throwing the opponent defense off cards. They draw them and say, "My God, this kid can play, or our defense stinks." One or the other. And I'd hear the defensive coaches mad at him because on the card they had it circled. He should throw it over here, but he throws it over here complete instead because that guy was covered. So that's why we made him our number 2 quarterback. By the time he became the starter, I knew he could play. I did not know he could play at the level he could play. Give credit to Mike Martz and John Branzell, who was his actual on-field coach under Mike Martz, and Al Saunders, my receiver coach, Jim Haniff, the offensive line coach, John Masco. These guys, Wilbert Montgomery, now a coach in the back. These guys did a marvelous job, but it all centered around a guy that played. I say this. I think he played the first 6 or 7 games of his career as a starter better than any quarterback in the history of the league. Look it up. I've looked it up. I can't find anybody that's done it better in those.
All right.
There are guys that excel under pressure. That's why they have the Medal of Honor for war heroes. They don't have a ticket. They gave him, "You're the Medal of Honor when the next guy up." No, they don't do that. They find out that's what he is once they put him under pressure. And that's what we found out about Kurt Warner. He threw 17 touchdowns and 3 interceptions the first 6 games. Okay. 1 interception after the first 2 we threw the first game against the Ravens. Okay. Had 3 games of 3 games of 124 quarterback efficiency rating or better.
Wow.
He's just, it's amazing. And, each game we'd watch him, say, oh my God. And I can remember Jim Hannafin standing right next to me. God bless Jim. He's long gone. Great coach. And we're ahead of the San Francisco 49ers at the end of the first quarter, fourth or fifth game of the season, 21-0. They had beaten the Rams 17 times in a row. That's hard to do. You almost have to throw games to lose 17 and go to 1.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're 21-0, and I turned to Jim. I says, Jim, you know something? This kid can play. You know, it just, and I give, you know, he's just a spectacular player.
It's incredible.
So, coaches, we told you before we got on into the show that we just recently moved to St. Louis just about 4.5 years ago. And I can tell you we do have some of our St. Louis families, we call them, that are watching this, and I'm sure they totally agree with you on the Hill being great and whatnot. So what does that put into perspective of winning a Super Bowl for St. Louis, knowing now the NFL is just not here in St. Louis anymore? So that's kind of like their last true memory of you know, having the NFL here in St. Louis.
Well, one thing it tells St. Louis is they know they can win a world championship because they've done it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
They know, and they came very, very close to winning a second 2 years later. Okay. They didn't. Okay. But that's, you know, there are a few teams that have never won it. Okay. So they can say that, they can take pride, and they were part of helping produce a world championship football team. And, you know, initially I can remember sitting in a marketing meeting in the off season, and they were talking about all the things this marketing department and the company they hired to market our team, where they were going to do, well, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to have these TV ads and all that. And I'm sitting back there like, you know, I don't sit in business meetings very often. Finally, I said, guys, the only thing we can do to help you guys is win. Mm-hmm. You'll sell every seat, every box seat, sell every advertisement thing there is. We'll sell them all. Just stick with us. Just stick with us. And they stuck with us, fortunately, you know, because there were a lot of rumors they're going to fire my butt after the second year. With 9 wins in 2 years, you know. But I remember telling John Shaw, God bless him, our president. I said, John, going into this season, I said, John, this is a good football team. We're going to win a lot of football games. Hey, you know what he said? Coach, don't tell me that. He says, all my coaches have told me that in the years past. But, you know, when you've been on the field as many times as I had been on the field and been around a lot of great football players, I knew we were talented enough to be a very fine football team. I didn't know we could be a world championship team. After the 49er win, God, you got me talking. After the 49er win, we go in there, like I say, it's the 4th or 5th game. We'd beaten the Super Bowl team at Atlanta Falcons a week before. Then we beat the 49ers playoff team. Okay. And I go in the meeting on Monday morning, head coach's important meeting. And I congratulate the team and you give out the game balls, that kind of stuff. And I say, you know, we're really fortunate, guys. There's only one team in the league now that can beat us. And fortunately for us, they're all sitting in this room. You guys are the only team that can beat us. If we get cocky, start thinking we're this and that, and don't focus on one freaking game at a time, we won't win it. But if you do, nobody's going to beat us. That's exactly what I told them. And I said this, I don't want to hear this on the radio. I don't want to see a quote with you in the newspaper that Coach Vermeil said this. Keep it to yourself and you will prove me right. And they did.
Yeah, I do remember, you know, just talking with people that have lived here and their memories of that team. And, you know, the Kurt Warner story, obviously everybody knows that. So then now let's kind of transition over to your AFC West, the other side of the state in Kansas City. You know, obviously there's been fantastic coaches that have rolled through the AFC West over, you know, the last few decades. You know, Mike Shanahan, Marty Schottenheimer, all those guys. So in your time in Kansas City, who was the toughest AFC West coach to game plan for during your time there?
Well, remember, John Gruden was still at Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think he ought to be coaching football. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's all political behind us, but John was in there, and then and Marty Schottenheimer, and Marty Schottenheimer was the coach before me. He should be in the Hall of Fame. You know, my God, Bonnie Schottenheimer coached 345 games, 21 seasons, won 205 games, a 60% winning percentage. He couldn't win a big one in the playoffs. But those guys before me. So we had a standard of winning with Carl Peterson running the team and the Hunt family of winning. And as soon as I got to Mike Shanahan in Denver, Hall of Fame football coach, I feel guilty that he and Holmgren and Coughlin aren't already in because I'm already in. Maybe they put me in because I'm the oldest. I don't know. But we could not beat Denver in Denver. 0 for 5. Great coaching. Great coaching. You're 0 for 5 in Denver. You get fired today. Look at Andy Reid has done. Okay, but we couldn't beat Mike Shanahan. We could beat him in Kansas City. In fact, we could lead at halftime in Denver. We could lead in the fourth quarter. We couldn't beat him. So I have great admiration and respect for Mike Shanahan. I think he's truly one of the Hall of Fame football coaches that I've ever coached against. So that was a bitch. When John Gruden left and the Raiders started going down, we beat them every time. Not because they didn't have good coaching, but they just didn't have the same football team, personnel-wise, and everything else. But I had great respect for John Gruden. Very, very. I knew him when he was a kid. Okay, when he was a graduate assistant at Tennessee. Okay, but those guys were tough.
All right, Austin, you're up.
All right, so this one, more of just kind of a Chiefs fan question, but kind of want to get a coach's perspective on it. But was there a real hatred for the Raiders when you were the Chiefs head coach, or was that just more for the fans? And I'll just like a mutual respect hatred, or even more of like a toxic hatred, or was that just all fans?
Well, I think all divisions, you guys know, all conferences have people they would rather beat than other teams, even though a win is a win. I never quite felt the same adversity that had established the level that I had established at Kansas City before I got there. Lamar Hunt did not like the Raiders for other reasons. Okay. Marty Schottenheimer did not like the Raiders. My first I remember when the Raiders played on a junior college football field. Okay.
Yeah.
In the East Bay. When I was a high school coach, I'd go watch them. Okay. So I'd been a fan of the Raiders early, and then John Madden was a friend, and so I didn't feel quite the same animosity. Though I knew I better not say I like them. But, to me, it was a team you'd love to beat, but you still respected it. You still respected them, even though I think Carl Peterson hated the Raiders, Lamar hated the Raiders. I was a little bit different in that. I didn't feel the hate. I felt the NFL respect for them, and I wanted to beat them badly because of their thoughts. And unfortunately, once we got going and Gruden left, we started winning ball games.
Yeah, no, I love that. It sounds like the hatred is definitely more for the fans, which makes sense. But
it's also easier to start winning when like a Trent Green starts really playing well. Okay.
Yeah.
Al Saunders with our offense did a beautiful job. My gosh. And that offense had performed many times every bit as well as the greatest show on turf. You just study the numbers and the stats and the running game and the Priest home, but Trent Green was just marvelous. I'm so grateful today that I was able to give him the opportunity that was cut short when he was with us at the Rams when we bought him there as our free agent quarterback to be our starter. And he didn't have a lot of experience. But boy, after his first year there and Al coaching him and these guys, Terry Shea coaching the quarterbacks, that he did a beautiful job. And that offense was, I've got the stats in front of me. We were either number 1 or number 2 for like 4 out of the 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of categories.
Oh, yeah. I still to this day say it was the 5 greatest linemen to ever play on the same football field together. From Willie Rowe to Waters to Wegman to Shields to Tate, like just across the board.
Brian Waters. Brian Waters is a better offensive guard than there are some guards in the NFL Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't think he's ever been given credit for how good he was at left guard.
Mhm.
I've never coached an offensive lineman that was so strong right at the point with a man on his nose. I always said he would be a better center than he was a guard, but he was an all-pro guard eventually. But Will Shields, right? Probably no better. Very few, if there was ever a guard better than Will Shields, I don't know who he is right now. Okay. And I've coached against them all, and I've tried to rate him in my own mind. But Willie Rofe, he's the most explosive big man. He could give a defensive end a headache by the end of the game because he was so explosive off the ball. He didn't push you off the ball. He knocked you off the ball. I had Orlando Pace, who was the most gifted athlete big man at St. Louis. So I was fortunate to have 2 Hall of Fame tackles on the same football team, and not on the same team, but in my same career.
Yep.
That was a great offensive line. Really, Casey Wigman really holds the NFL record for the most consistent offensive snaps taken in his career. He's taken more offensive snaps as an offensive lineman than anybody. Now, there are people that say a guy that just went in the Hall of Fame is, and I know for a fact, Casey played more snaps and played well. Tiny guy, he was a technician. I stay in touch with him. He's doing well. Really a quality guy. Quality guy.
Nope. Yeah, I agree.
How about having Tony Gonzalez in that group?
Yeah, not even mentioning him,
Yeah.
right?
And what made that offensive line even better is when we took him out or put Jason Dunn in and had 2 tight ends. Jason Dunn was a right tackle playing tight end.
Yeah.
200. He always said he was 76, and he was in the 280s half the time. But he could block a 7 technique. He really could block somebody. And nowadays they just stand up at chest bones.
Yeah.
He could knock off the ball as a tight end. That's why we were able to run so well when we had him in the ball game.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So Cody, I'm going to pivot off of this a little bit since we touched on the rivalry aspect of it, and I kind of just want to get Coach's viewpoint on what I've mentioned as my favorite Chiefs game growing up was the Chiefs beating the Falcons 56-10 with 8 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
And kind of get your viewpoint on that. Was that the game plan going in, or did the run just?
Man, at that time, Arizona was flopping defensive players according to the formations and the personnel groups. Okay, like this. Jimmy Mora Jr. was the head coach, and Mike Solari, my offensive line coach, really fine football coach, and Irv Eatman was his assistant, and Al Saunders. They put a game plan together that I think it still holds the record, right?
Yep, it is.
Touchdowns, yeah. Boy, they just blasted them, and it almost looked easy. You go back and look at that film because we were able to shift and out leverage. Whenever you out leverage a defense and have a Jason Dunn at one point, and you shift from a Tony Gonzalez side to a Jason Dunn side, who now like a left tackle playing over here on the left side, and put a wing back and all these guys in motion and all that, and their defense couldn't adjust quickly enough. But that same team went to Denver the next week and beat them. Atlanta Falcons did.
Yep.
But my coaches, Mike Solari, Al Saunders, and those guys did a beautiful job of putting together the running game plan. Of course, Priest Holmes, Tony Richardson scored. Our fullback scored from outside, I think, the 20-yard line one time because of the holes they blocked. And everybody in the offensive line was mobile, not only big and strong, they could run. They could really run. Yeah, Brian Waters, his rookie years, was covering kickoffs as an offensive guard. Okay. Yeah, and then Will Shields could run like a deer. Casey Wigman could run. Willie Rofe could run. So we were able to do a lot of things with the offensive line. Specifically in that game, it just murdered him. Yeah, that's really a memorable football game in my career.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite, and to this day, I know the league's changed, but that game specifically is why I wholeheartedly enjoy the trenches. That's the part I watch when I still watch football, and I love run games. So, Yeah, just I remember Priest Holmes, Derek Blaylock, and Tony Richardson. Just whatever they wanted, they had that game.
Yeah, they really, and that probably in my mind, from a running game standpoint, that's the best I have ever seen a game plan, a true adjusted game plan, because you are playing against this style of defense and the mechanics with which they included execute perfectly. It just, it had never happened before, and it hasn't happened since. It's still a record.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Yeah.
Priest Holmes' numbers really are Hall of Fame numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. His 3-year stretch is legendary.
Yeah, 26. Yeah, I mean, this guy, he was not real fast, very balanced, very strong, and understood offensive line blocking. And he would set up blocks because he knew how the defense would flow and then take advantage of it, because he was always balanced and always under control. Very fine football player.
Yep. Thanks, Coach.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, Tim.
All right. So you just talked about how, Austin mentioned how the league is different than how it was back in your day. So if you were coaching in today's NFL, how would you adapt to the evolution of offensive schemes and player communication styles?
Well, I'd be more aggressive in offensive line play. So, like Detroit. I'd use more I formation. I'd use a higher percentage of play action passing. I would use the shotgun, but I wouldn't use it as much as people are using. The shotgun, there's a lot of advantage to do it, but if that's what you're doing most of the time, first off, the quarterback can't see pre-snap real well because he's got to watch the snap.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
What he sees coming to him is the football, not the adjustment some defensive back made to change the entire coverage. So that's a disadvantage. The other disadvantage, it eliminated the true draw play. You hand the ball off from the shotgun here, that's not a true draw play.
Mm-hmm.
Quarterback takes the ball and drops back. The linebackers start playing softer and start going into coverages. And now you hand it off. I never coached an offense when I was my own coordinator that the draw play wasn't the leading rushing play, average per carry. But you have eliminated that type of play when you're always in the shotgun. Now you've gained some others, especially today with how they run the quarterback. I can remember being in the shotgun. One reason I went to the shotgun when I was running my offense with the Eagles is because Dallas used it a lot. And by us using it in training camp, it got our team ready to face it and see more of it in game day situations. So, but there were many times I said, geez, I see Jaworski hand the ball off. If he'd have kept the ball out the backside, he'd have run for 20 yards. But I was afraid to do it. First off, he was tough enough to do it, but I couldn't afford to get him hurt.
Yeah.
He wasn't a running back style quarterback. He was a quarterback, a drop back passer, and a good one. But I would include more. I think Detroit does it better than anybody else. 49ers still do it. 49ers supposed to run plays that we were running in 1970. In 1971, when I was coordinator of offense for the Rams, they were the same thing, some of the same things, but they mix a lot of variations from that. It's not just all one thing. The offenses today are much better. They're fun to watch. And sometimes I say to myself, how stupid could I be to not to be doing some of these things when I was an offensive coordinator? Why didn't I think? If I was a smart guy, I'd have thought of some of these things. But there are so many clever offensive coaches today and the rules have made it a little easier. But the coaching of the offense today is far more sophisticated, far more. We didn't add as much offense per week as they do today and vary it as much from week to week. I mean, our game plans didn't vary that much because we wanted to make sure we just kept getting better doing what we're doing. And we're only giving you 4 or 5 days to do it as defensively as well as we do it offensively. But today, when we were my last team we coached, we ran a play 1 week in that scheme and shifting and motion. We wouldn't run it again for 4 weeks. And the Eagles offense, well, I was running, we'd run the same play next week, same time, maybe same place in the field, maybe the same down and distance, Maybe that's why we got slowed down at the end of the season too. I don't know, but I think the offenses are outstanding. They're fun to watch. I feel guilty that I wasn't smart enough to think of some of those things myself.
How do you think you would, on the defensive side, counter these offenses? Like you talked to how you would run, a lot more I formation rather than shotgun, but you see all these electric offenses like the Chiefs, like the Eagles. How would you stop them from being that explosive?
Poorly.
Great answer, Coach. Great answer.
Yeah.
He's honest.
I want to be a defensive coordinator today. Okay.
That's fair. That's fair.
I was with George Allen and our defensive schemes. We had about 3 coverages, and some of them very sophisticated. And he called one of them a zone. It really wasn't a zone. It was a man for man. But today you're confronted with so many different formation variations and personnel groupings and the number of receivers on the field that can all catch the ball. And everybody is going to catch the ball. And it's much tougher. That's why, like, Vic Fangio probably did the finest job of coordinating a defense last year than about anybody's ever done. Really. I mean, it was just the job he did. Now, they had good personnel. You don't do what he did without having good personnel. But he did great. But now, they didn't have zone blitzes and all that kind of stuff. And when I was coaching the Eagles, a little bit of it started coming in when we were at the Rams together there. But, it kept growing. Yeah. But, the running game, I think, sort of hurts some of these zone blitz options that people run. And I think you see less of it today than you saw 3 years ago.
Mm.
Yep.
I wouldn't want to be a defensive coordinator. No, somebody else.
Fair.
I love that honesty. I do.
Yeah.
I do too.
All right, so
All right,
sticking with the modern theme here, who's the one player in today's game that you would build your team around if you were still coaching and had your pick?
Well, it still has to go with the quarterback. Kansas City kid could play, right? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How about this guy from Buffalo? He could play, Candy.
Yeah.
Kind of guy. Yeah, how about Baltimore Ravens?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
My gosh, that position, Mahomes, he elevated what is called a great quarterback. I've sat in his quarterback pre-game or game plan meetings on Saturday with him, with the coordinator, with Andy, and I've sat in the offensive meetings with Andy and those kind of things. And he is the thing I always worried about him is that he would get so confident in what he could do, he would get reckless.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you get reckless at that position because you think you can do everything, it's usually when you start getting interceptions. But him, and then kid at Buffalo, my God, and then Ravens. I don't know. That's start with one of those guys, and you're going to look pretty smart. If you don't have them today, it's tough.
Yeah,
it's really tough. And you're talking about the other conferences. How about the Los Angeles Rams? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What they've done, what he did last year, Sean did last year. Yeah. And Harbaugh will get it done. I think Harbaugh will get it done in San Diego. Now he's got a little different attitude, but the toughness, he brings toughness to the team, and,
Yes.
and why they played so poorly in the playoff game, I don't know.
Yeah.
But no head coach is immune. Okay. No head coach is immune to that kind of game. There are very few. I don't know of a coach that wasn't guilty of coaching a game that ended up going that bad.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it many times. Other coaches have done it. The Hall of Fame coaches have done it. So, but I see that Charger thing behind you there. I believe Harbaugh will get it done.
Right.
Yeah,
Harbaugh, I trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have a saying on here that
He's another
the
one.
only
Includes
explanation
a lot
for the Chargers-
of. He's another one that includes the running game and that
Mhm.
tailback position and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have our saying on here for the Chargers. The only explanation for them doing what they do is just sometimes the Chargers are going to charger, and there's no other explanation for it, right? Like sometimes the Chargers just get in their own way, and that's kind of what they're known for, at least in my lifetime.
Well, they probably still need, I think Belichick says this best in his book. If you like good football, read Belichick's new book. It's out.
Mhm.
It should be mandatory. If I were an owner, I'd make every coach of my staff read it. You have to have a few elite players.
Mhm.
And you can be really good, but when you get in those great big games, the elite, Isaac Bruce, elite Kurt Warner, elite Torrey Holt, make plays and make the play you design better, because all of a sudden the ball's in his hand. And then all of a sudden you've got 14 points that you're taking credit for as a coach, but this elite guy did it. And
Mhm.
I think Belichick in his book says that many times, and it's a great read, very good book. Every business leader ought to read it.
Yeah, Coach, as we kind of, get here towards the end of our questions, you've obviously been around the game for a very long time. You've had great teams, great rebuild stories. Is there a moment looking back? Is there a game, a moment, or a player from your career that maybe still gives you goosebumps just thinking about?
Lawrence Taylor, pain in the ass. Oh, he came in. He was a rookie when I was coaching when he came in and coached against him. To me, he's the finest football player that ever played that I saw, right along with Reggie White.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't coach against Reggie White, but Lawrence Taylor, he was, and then who better to coach him than Bill Parcells?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many guys coach a game any better than Bill Parcells? I always said I wish I had more Bill Parcells personality within me, because I really respected how he did things and how tough he was. And I was raised by a Bill Parcells type father. Okay, I couldn't do anything right, and if I did it right, that was expected. Okay,
Right.
yeah. But Lawrence Taylor, to me, when I talk to my players and we're drinking a glass of wine, bullshitting, and we talk about that, not one of them hesitates to bring up Lawrence Taylor.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
So Coach, we're just about winding down here, and I do want to give you time to talk about your wine that you have, and also you shared some great stories about guests going up to your memorabilia spot during COVID. But in 2022, when you were elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, being inducted, being there in Canton, what did that mean to you professionally and personally to be amongst one of the best of all time and being in that exclusive club?
Well, I'm very grateful. I've always said I was an end product. I was the end product of all these guys I coached, or all the coaches that coached for me. I was the guy that ended up getting all the credit for what they did collectively, and I mean that, and I'm not trying to be over humble about it, but I sincerely believe that. And those guys, what they did to put me in there, I'll feel a lot better when Tom Coughlin goes in, Shanahan, Holmgren, those guys, Schottenheimer, Dan Reeves, my God, 570 something games he coached, and two different teams, the Super Bowls, and I'll feel better about my title as a Hall of Fame coach when those guys go in. Mike Holmgren was supposed to go in this year with the new voting system, he didn't get in, and I was so pissed off. It's disrespectful to the NFL coaching profession to not put those guys in there, in my opinion. And I have strong opinion. Okay.
Well, it's definitely valuable considering you're in there, and those coaches rightfully deserve to be in there.
I feel guilty. 2 weeks ago, I was in Canton, Ohio, with my videographer from the Rams was selected, like I said, the Hall of Excellence there, and I was there with the old general manager there, sitting right next to me. Excuse me, his name, Raider and Green Bay Packer GM.
Reggie McKenzie.
No, GM.
Oh,
Hall of Fame. No,
Oh,
gentlemen. Come on.
Oh man, guess the person. Okay.
yeah.
Anyway,
okay. We're missing it. Sorry, guys.
That'll come to us.
because he had Mike Holmgren,
Mhm.
Yeah, and I told him how upset I was about it. Anyway, they will get in eventually. and hopefully maybe they'll adjust how they vote. There was a different system when I went in. With the new system, I wouldn't have gotten in. So I'm hoping it goes to the point where when a guy truly deserves it, he gets in.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and when you think about those guys and like the impact, like even Shanahan's offense today, right? Like they've adjusted what McVay's able to do with it, what Kyle's been able to do with it, and even like the offenses with like Holmgren and even yourself with how you guys were able to do it. You know, what is it like seeing how these offenses have evolved around, like offenses that you've game planned for, but now you're seeing them in different, you know, jet sweep motions and all these other things? What's that like to see those and to know that those guys haven't quite got that call yet?
Well, first off, as old as I am, you can see the evolution of the game.
Yep.
There are no secrets, especially today with the computers. You run something good yesterday on Sunday, on Monday, everyone will be evaluating it. Every team will be evaluating. By Wednesday, all the teams that liked it will have it in their offense. I mean, and add it to their scheme. So offensive schemes have grown. They keep adding things to it, and the time spent on the individual player on the practice field has decreased. Okay. I was just talking to an old-fashioned defensive coach the other day, and his son coaches in the league, and he said his son would love to have more time to coach the individual player. But you do so much more teamwork and scheme work coaching than you used to do in developing the individual player to play his position. But the offense is mature, and even with mine, you add things and then you'll eliminate things. You add things and eliminate things. And that's Andy Reid. Nobody does it better than him. One reason, he's humble.
Yep.
He eliminates what he thought was going to be good and adds things that are going to be better.
Yeah.
And he all his experience. Can you imagine coaching your own offense all the years that Andy Reid has coached his offense? What surprised him? What has he not seen? People wonder why he does so well in the fourth quarter, like last year when he without Andy Reid, they don't win half of those games. They don't. They're just not that good. Okay, they keep coming from behind, and but his whole scheme of things and almost everything he sees, he's experienced before, and knows how he's going to react. And probably, I think, becomes very good at anticipating change the defense might make because they're successful doing this. Nobody's doing it better than Andy Reid. Maybe no one's ever done it as well as Andy Reid. I don't know if anyone's coached offense as long as Andy Reid has.
Yeah.
But if you watch him, all of a sudden you'll see him in offensive formation that he used 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But only once in a while. It was the basis of offense years ago, but now the basis is a multiple scheme rather than I formation left, I formation right, approach set, fullback, running back, or a split back formation, all these kind of things. And then shotgun comes into it. And the evolution of offense to where it is today, you don't want to apply for a defensive coordinator's job.
That's exactly right. Well, Coach, we're towards the end, but I do want to give you the floor to talk about Vermeil wine, which, as Corey and Austin said, that they got a bottle shipped to them from a friend, and obviously it's all over Napa Valley. And so I'd love to give you the floor to just talk about the history of it, what makes you passionate about it, what's to come of your wine, and like where you're hoping to take it to. So the floor is yours, sir. We'd love to hear more about it.
Well, you know, I was born and raised in Calistoga, the north end of the Napa Valley, in 1936, 88 years ago. And my great-grandfather on the Italian side of my family owned part of the vineyard that we still pick today, okay? We don't own any of the vineyard. It's a 175-acre Frediani vineyard. There's a portion we call the Icari portion of the vineyard, which he owned, okay? My grandfather, Vermeil, on the French side of the family, would take grapes from that vineyard and make our own family wine. And that was not unique in Calistoga. It's probably still not. The old timers made their own wines. And so I grew up in that atmosphere, and I would help my grandfather from time to time, especially as he got older. And I was fascinated, but really, I was fascinated about when the whole families were together 17, 18, 20 people sitting around a great big table, and 4 or 5 different kinds of wine sitting on the table, no labels on them, and them discussing this vintage, the flavors, and that just fascinated to me as to how important wine was to the family and to the meal. It was never like you were drinking alcohol. It was like you're drinking milk. It was just part of your dinner. That's the way I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
So one time I asked a friend, Paul Smith of On the Edge Winery, who was running part of Mondavi, ran Opus One program for him, not making the wine, but he ran the program, and he had a little winery in his basement, On the Edge Winery. And I said, Paul, I'd love to find a way to put my Vermeil family name on a bottle of wine because it was so important to my career growing up. And he said, I'll do it. So he made about 125 cases of Vermeil Cabernet. Okay. And a friend of my wife's in St. Louis painted the label, and we had a copy. That's our label on the first ones. And 1999 was the first vintage. 1999 was all hobby. I had $0, and he was selling it as part of his wine. On the Edge Wine, he had other labels, other wines, Cabernet Franc, Zinfandel, all that. But it was the Vermeil Cabernet, Jean-Louis Vermeil, my dad's name, my great-grandfather's name. And lo and behold, my real close friends. I just spent the weekend, 4th of July with them. A lot of money. Said, let's take your hobby and turn it into a business. You have all the connections. Okay. I said, all right, guys, you want to do it? We'll do it. So we ended up buying out the little winery that he had in barrels, labeling it Vermeil wine. And then in 2008, we turned it into a full-fledged business. Okay. And for a while, we sold it all around the United States, tried to. And I did most of the marketing is traveling. Houston was my best city because we had an organization there called Specs that really did a good job for us. But we didn't make enough wine to service it, and I couldn't be every place, and we didn't have employees. So right now, you get our wine by being in the Vermeil Wine Club, which varies between 450 and 520, depending 3 times a year shipment, 3 bottle, 6 bottle, 12 bottle, or all Cabernet. And our wines win awards. Our tasting room in Napa, we don't own it, but we rent the building. It's been voted the #1 tasting room in Napa 2 years in a row. This last year, it was voted the #1 tasting room in Napa County, not directly connected to the winery itself. So we've done it right. We don't make any money, but we pay all our bills. We don't owe anybody. And normally we make enough money to start next year's crop. It's like a dairy. You've got to go to work every day. There's something always going on. And when you don't own anything, we custom crush at Mending Wall Winery between Calistoga and St. Helena. Thomas Brown is our lead consultant, who is Cabernet of the country. Okay. He is considered one of the finest. I call him the Belichick of the Napa Valley. Okay. His winemaker guy, Tim Baronic, make our wines. And we're proud of them. Our 2023 vintage is by far going to be our best vintage, but it's also going to be by far for everybody in the Valley. It was a great year. The whole industry right now is down. Kids are drinking these seltzer drinks with a little vodka or whatever it is. And people aren't drinking it. I'm trying to make up the difference, but it doesn't work. Our business is off about 10%, but to us, it doesn't. We've never done it to make money. Every time we got money, we try to do something better with it, and we don't owe anybody any money. So nobody's taken $1 out of our business. We will probably have about 2,200 cases of wine to sell in our 2023 vintage. Our 24 Sauvignon Blancs are already out on the market. Our 23 Chardonnay is already out. The reds were bottled a month ago, and they won't be out until the end of the year or into next year. But anyway, we're proud of what we do. And, I look forward to being involved because it keeps me connected to what helped me develop the values I have in my own life. Going out with those farmers and working those vineyards. I pick prunes with them. Okay. And watch these people work. My picking team, when I'm driving a tractor, those guys will fill a ton of grapes in 20 to 25 minutes by hand.
Wow.
Wow.
That's incredible.
Sweat. It doesn't matter. They're sweating right through shirts, and they work with a smile on their face. I have great respect for our Hispanics in the Napa Valley. Some of them been there I went to school with. Okay.
Right. Wow. Such an incredible story regarding Vermeil Wines. Thank you, Coach, for giving us your time. You guys, that's it. That's the show. I mean, Coach, we've been sitting here for an hour and 10, and I'm still like blown away that we had an hour of your time to talk football, talk history. This has been something that I will remember forever, and I really appreciate you giving us your time. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. All right, go Chiefs. All right.
Go Chiefs. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks,
Coach.
Thank you, Coach.
Be well, Coach.
Take care.
All right, guys, that's it. We're going to end the show there. Subscribe, follow for everything. I have nothing else to say. You guys, let's just end it.
Yeah.
Have a good one, guys. We'll catch you on the next episode.